Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Ted, and today I'm hanging out with
Eric's Dave.
And today we're going to talk about the perils of the overly good character.
Jump down in the description below where you can gain RPG tips from Nerdarchy as well as learn how to game with us.
So I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and somehow we got on the superheroes, and like Batman, Spider-Man, they go out of their way to never kill their adversary, or through the 90+% of their hero life, that's the way they run things. And it begged the question, is it possible to run that style character in a D&D game?
Well, I'm going to have to say yes, because Uthgar has let tons of people go.
And to an extent, yes, but I'm talking about every single instance. So
Yeah.
like when you're fighting the orcs and the kobolds, all right, I'm gonna stabilize them. I'm going to make sure that every single person is alive. Like I think it gets to be like a
Sounds
major
monotonous to me.
monotonous. It becomes tedious, and at the same time, yes, in an out of game discussion, we talked about this with Ryan off camera, and he's like, oh well, you could still take the treasure from the battle and leave them alive because you've proven the victor. But then you're dealing with, well, I'm technically stealing this from them, and whatever have you. So you still could technically get the loot, but you're
Appropriating, actually.
You're leaving your enemies alive, and what kind of threat is that going to cause you later in a modern day setting when Batman and Spider-Man go up against villains and bad guys, henchmen?
In theory, they go to jail.
In theory, they go to jail, and
for the next book.
they're alive to threaten them another day. But we're talking about peons and major villains that are on par. Well, when you're talking about in a fantasy setting, and I'm an adventurer. Well, all right, I've left 30 orcs back there and 50 kobolds over there. Well, they'll just come back with bigger numbers. Like they're still alive to threaten.
Well, they are, but here's like speaking to that point specifically. In a comic book or superhero genre, like they kind of know who you are, like your persona as that superhero.
Right.
I would say in a fantasy realm, you're just another dwarf or human or whatever. It would probably take a little while for your name to actually get around for them to know who you are.
That's true.
Now, could they find out? Sure, but do they? Will they care enough? Maybe, maybe not. Like you're just a generic human that got over them, and they're just happy to live. Now, I will say, in the fantasy genre, does not support this style of play as readily as a superhero genre.
Right.
One, you were talking mostly fantasy is mostly based off of a European medieval setting, so there isn't the same kind of legal structure and way for these evildoers to be punished, so they're still out there. So that's a problem.
So if you're running a like an urban game, and you're trying to get that hero of the night situation in a city that is rife with crime, that might be something that you could do, and you're setting that style up to mirror that kind of Batman, Spider-Man-esque situation, and then it's possible. But I feel
like there's other problems though. Like I feel like during those times, there's a good possibility that the sentences were much harsher anyway. So like you may have just let them live to be executed or hung. So it doesn't matter as much.
So that is something that I hadn't even really considered, that by not killing them, that you're really just setting them up to die later. But I just, like, as my comic book hero knowledge increases, and as I learn more about different characters, like, I find that my love of Wolverine and his crazy underdog status, I find that he's he's got no problems just killing anybody. But the Batman, the Spider-Man, where I'm gonna not kill them, like, I hold them higher up now. It's like, I like that mentality, but I just don't know how to go about having that kind of mindset in
a D&D
game. So would it be like, would you transition that into like more of a situation where you offer quarter, and if they refuse, then it's okay? Like
well, the other problem too that makes it also difficult is when you're talking like superhero genre and comic books, like a lot of times they're punching and kicking each other, or they're using fantastic abilities. In a fantasy game, you're using axes and swords and really big hammers to hit people over the head.
It's true.
So it's not really very realistic to think that you're going to leave everyone a survivor. You whirlwind your way through the orcish horde with your greatsword, leaving them all unconscious. It is so in that aspect, it's a little unbelievable. Obviously, in 5th edition, there's option to go, I knocked them out, I didn't kill them. But when you're doing that, when you're fighting that many things, to say you're knocking them all out, it'd be kind of silly. You're gonna actually probably accidentally lop off some heads, especially if you're using like a great sword or something.
So let's take this a step further. Like, what is the way if someone presented you with, I want to play a character that has as close to that kind of mindset? Monk. So you'd go monk, and what would you say? Like, how would you RP that? How would you handle that? Would you?
Oh, that's easy because the monk character probably he may have just taken a vow to never take a life.
Mm-hmm.
It may be the whole Gandalf thing, don't take that which you cannot give. But I've sired some children, so then I technically give life. So now I can take at least 2. And we're even.
Wow.
Don't take that serious, Internet. I'm really joking. I'm not going to take any lives today.
Oh, God, Dave. All right, so you would basically say, he's taken a vow to not take a life. He always does non-lethal damage. He's not gonna execute anyone thereafter. But then he wouldn't try to stop his party from doing the finishing off, or would he?
Probably not. He might preach to them, about why they shouldn't do that, and and the bad karma, or the damage to their soul and spirit they're doing, or he may even like annoy them enough to where it's not even worth killing them anymore. Right. But yeah, that's probably the route I would go with that kind of character. You might be able to do it with a spellcaster as well, depending on what kind of your spell selection. Like, definitely, as long as you're not. I guess as long as you're not blowing things up or setting them on fire, I could go with it. I could even reasonably see maybe some lightning spells being used to tase someone. Like some lightning bolt extreme tasing. And choose not to kill them.
Okay.
Because it's magic, you might be like Thunder Wave. I could say, all right, it's kind of like Force, so you can probably
it's concussive.
Yeah.
It's just, they got their brain rattled around. But
you can magic missile some batarangs at them. It'd probably be all right. But you start fireballing them, I'm gonna be like, nah,
you're roasting them all over open fire.
I'm gonna gently disintegrate them into unconsciousness.
I'm gonna use subdual damage for my meteor swarm.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's some things that probably just aren't going to fly. But yeah, I mean, I guess you could use other characters where maybe it's interesting where they use a blunted blade or something.
Now, like, what about like a staff fighter?
Possibly, but still, anytime. Like, here's the thing, right? Anytime you use a foreign object to hit somebody with, like a staff fighter, right? Mm-hmm. For instance, like, let me gently hit you upside the head with a baseball bat. Like, you're gonna, if you go doing that often enough, eventually you're gonna accidentally kill somebody.
That's true.
Even if you're being careful.
But I mean, I think, like, short of, you've had a lot more martial arts training than I've had, and we've got our friend Larry who has a ton more than either of us combined.
Well, also in our games, Todd, he's a kung fu master.
There is that as well. I don't know how much control you learn when you've gone, those higher ranks.
I don't you don't, when you're in a fight, like if you're fighting at that level, you're fighting to win. Like, sure, you can subdue an opponent, and like you have more options because you have more skills, I believe. But when you're actually striking somebody, if you don't commit to your strikes, you're really hindering yourself and handicapping yourself in the fight.
I know that like part of the some martial arts mindset is you're not striking the target, you're striking through the target.
Yeah.
So like if I'm like, okay, I'm going to punch you in the face, well, I'm envisioning my hand going through your head in order to get the maximum power from that strike. So I mean, even then, like, isn't that why once you reach a certain level, like, you can't get into a fight unless it's like a life-threatening situation or craziness like that?
I wouldn't say you can't, but no, the point is, like, if someone who's trained for 20 plus years to be a good fighter, like, to pull back, they're going to have to fight against 20 years of the instincts they've developed. Where they may have more options where they can seduce someone by using chokes and locks and things like that. But when you're actually talking about striking somebody, I think it's kind of one of those things, you're either hitting them or you're not. Sure, you can pull it somewhat, but I've seen it done for demonstrations, but I've never heard of it done actually in combat.
Right. Because there's a big difference between, all right, I'm going to do this demonstration where everything is set up per my desire, as opposed to I don't know what my opponent is going to do and I'm prepared to do X. It's a big difference.
I also remember having a conversation with someone who had boxed in college, right?
Okay.
And he was telling me about one of his experiences where he was fighting a guy who was a joke, right? So he was toying with him, he was playing around, and I think he said, what happened was he got knocked out because there's always a puncher's chance, because he was showboating and playing around and didn't take his opponent serious, his opponent got one shot in and it was a good one.
Right.
And sometimes that's all it takes. And that's another reason why, if you're in a serious conflict or combat, you don't really want to hold back. Right. You want to end it as soon as possible. That is the best possible outcome in my mind.
Right.
So I don't know how much that adds to the discussion of our pacifist type character in a D&D game.
It takes it further out of the realm of possibilities, but it's given me some food for thought. It's definitely possible to go I'm not gonna kill unless I'm forced to type of situation, as opposed to it's just not possible for me to do it. Right.
Well, and then there's also raises the question of things like undead and constructs that aren't really alive, and elementals even. Like, do they count? So. Well,
I mean, technically, anything that's not of this plane, the knowledge is if you knock it out, they just vanish and go back to where they are. Undead, for mindless undead and constructs, they don't have a will of their own, so you aren't really ending a soul, you're just stopping the magic that animates it. So it depends upon how extremist you want to go.
But anyway, it just brings up a lot of interesting questions,
Indeed,
which you guys can help us answer down in the comments below. You guys that are actually, I know we have a bunch of martial artists that watch us as well. If you want to weigh in on Ted's question as well earlier, you can, better than me, because it's been a long time since I've done anything physical in that nature. But while you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out on nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.